Hello, everyone. This is James LeGrand from spiritualindividual.com. I'm an author and a life strategist, and today I'd like to talk to you today about the recession, depression, and motivation stagnation. So let's first talk about the recession, depression. The news media says that the recession is over. However, record numbers of people remain on unemployment. People are losing their homes at a steadily increasing rate. Foreclosures continue to go up. Jobs are not being brought back fast enough. People are being forced to take temporary jobs in order to replace half or a quarter of a permanent job they previously held. Families are talking about starvation or have food anxiety, as they call it. It's clear that food inflation is taking place right now as prices are starting to rise, and you can look at that in any supermarket. Food stamps are on the rise. It's incredible what's taking place right now. There's so many people hurting. It's just incredible. This is going to be a very difficult season to get through. When I say season, meaning the next several years of this taking place until we can get to a point of recovery. The other thing I want to mention is they talk about the new normal. Anytime you see news events that they talk about the new normal, and even a television show that talks about a family that was downsized, and the show is called Downsized, you can bet that there's a new programming taking place, trying to program the people out there to believe that this is the new normal, that you are supposed to take and accept less, that you cannot get back to where you were previously, or even better, go beyond that. There's a couple of things related to that I'm going to touch on here today. First thing is, you are not your material items. You are not the car, you are not your house, you are not your job title. Those are not who you are. I once knew a gentleman who had a very high position at a company, a Fortune 500 company, and he was let go. And because his personality, because his identity was so closely tied to that title, when he lost the job, he felt as if he lost who he was, his identity. That is not the case. You do not lose your identity. You're a person, you're an individual with a set of beliefs, understandings, and gifts that fulfills a job role in order to bring in an income to support your life and your lifestyle, and of course those that you love. So you are not your job. Don't believe that because you lost your job or that somehow you lost a part of yourself. You didn't. Okay, you just lost that particular income opportunity. That does not mean there aren't others out there for you to either find or create. You are also not your material items. If your house was foreclosed on, if your cars are repossessed, if your credit cards were slashed and your savings account goes down to zero, you're still the same individual. You just have less. You're dealing with less. You're going through a moment in time that's not pleasant. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you're somehow less of an individual. It doesn't mean that you're somehow being punished by God or something like that. That's not what's happening here. There's just this massive issue with a lot of greedy people doing bad things behind the scenes that have helped to cause what's happened right now. And now companies are just cautious on hiring. They're cautious on spending money because they feel they need to retain their money, because they also don't know what's going to happen to the taxes. They don't know what's going to happen to any rules or regulations with exporting other positions. So everyone's staying still and saving until they know what their next move is. It's not you. It's not about you personally. So let's talk about motivation stagnation. Some people out there are just giving up. Some people are saying, hey, why even bother? I worked my whole life, 20 years from college or whatever, from high school to get to where I was, just to lose it all in a year. Why bother to rebuild? Why bother to try and get back to where I was? And I'm going to say to you, you got to stop that line of thinking. You are what you think about. That was Earl Nightingale who said that. You create what you believe. So if you believe that you're not enough, guess what? You're not going to have enough. But if you believe that not only will you recover, you will prosper, you absolutely will. 10 years ago, I wasn't in a very good financial situation. I wasn't. And I don't talk about it much, but I'll say it here because I'm hoping this helps someone. And I was able to turn that around and say, okay, I know what I have to do. I have to knuckle up. I have to tighten the belt. I have to spend less. I have to save more. I have to get rid of my debt. And I have to be more educated about money. How does money work? When let me ask you a question. When they talk about quantitative easing in the news, do you know what that means? Do you understand what happens when the Federal Reserve or any national bank or any of these big banks, central banks, print money? What that does to the money that you have and how that may increase or decrease its value. If you don't know, and I didn't know at that time, by the way, I had to go and find out. I had to learn about how money works. You should be doing that, and that's what I had to do. Find out how debt works. Why is debt so important to banks? Why do they want you to have debt? Well, they want you to have debt because they make money off the interest. You see? So you having debt makes you an asset to any organization that's lending you that money. That's why debt's so important to companies in terms of staying in business, because they're making money off of you borrowing from them. It's simple things, but when you think about it, it starts to help paint a picture for how your life has to be. You have to come into the creation of a life where you're saving more and you're spending less. Where rather than living at 120% of your income, you're living at, let's say, 85% of your income, and 15% of your income is going into savings or more. Okay, where you're not borrowing money through credit cards and buying 3, 4, 5 cars and huge houses that you can't afford, but rather you're figuring out, what do I need and what's really going to make me happy. A mansion may not make you happy. I'm sure it won't actually. But what requirements do you have in a house? What makes sense? What makes sense for a sensible apartment? What makes sense for the type of car you really need? Okay, so I need you guys to get off your ass and stop this motivation stagnation. This is difficult. This is hard, and I know I've been through it. But I can tell you this: 10 years later, I'm glad I went through it, because now I'm trained in how to deal with economies like this. And thankfully, not only did I not suffer a depreciation in any way through this recession, I'm net up. I was able to make certain moves to take advantage of lower prices, of better opportunities, of things being available. I couldn't do that 10 years ago. All right, so if you're in that boat that I was in 10 years ago, and I know a lot of you are, I need you to understand that it doesn't have to stay that way. This is temporary. Remember, all problems are temporary. Also remember, though, the solution to all problems cannot come from the same mind that created them. So if you had a certain mindset that created your unique situation, and then things happen that put you back, you must start to think differently. You must start to educate yourself. And there's plenty of ways to do that on YouTube, books. I mean, there's so much free information. There's no excuse for why you can't figure out a way out of your current situation and become even better. It all starts with belief. So let's start with step 1. You have to believe differently. Stop believing that this is what you're stuck with and that you're waiting for someone to save you, and start changing your beliefs. Start seeing yourself in the life that you want. I'm not talking about living in a castle and driving Mercedes. I'm talking about a stable, income earning, tight-knit family type lifestyle. Let's just get back to that. All right, so let's start with that right there. So believe that that's possible. So that's your first step, right? For some people, that's going to be very quick. For some of you, that's going to be very difficult, because you'd rather believe that it's sunk and what's the use and it's done. First off, start believing in yourself. Believe that you can have the type of quality life that you've always wanted. Number 2, take action. Any action, anything toward that goal. And I promise you that if you keep that goal, if you write it down, you repeat it to yourself over and over again, you post it on your mirror, you put it in your wallet, you walk around with it, you put it on your refrigerator, you see it everywhere you go, I promise you the opportunities will start to come to you from the actions that you take. Okay, so you can't just give up on action. So number 1, believe. Number 2, take action. And number 3, continue to educate yourself. Learn more. Continue to, it may not be that you find a job. It may be that you create a new opportunity for yourself. It may be that there's a business that you've been wanting to start, or a hobby that you run that can easily convert into a business. Okay, so it could be you're sending out 100 resumes a week, or a day for that matter. It could be that while at the same time you're doing that, you're taking a hobby. And maybe you're teaching, families baseball on the side. Maybe you start your own life coaching business. Maybe there's a book you've been meaning to write and you just want to go ahead and get that published. Maybe you can start with a blog. Maybe, who knows? There's a catering business. There's so many things that you could do, just based on your unique talents. And I know many of you have far more talent than I do, right? So make sure that you figure out what you're good at. And maybe as a third step, number 1, you're believing. Number 2, you're taking action. Third step, you're getting educated. Fourth step, begin using some of the skills you already have in order to try and help make ends meet.